Hi, everybody. Welcome. All right, we're going to start our board meeting for Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, and the time is 3:04. So let's do, Diane, let's do a roll call. Please.
Okay. Chantel Foxy here. Lindsay Hostler absent. Bernie sorry.
Here.
Mary Mellon here. Summer Thomas
Here.
Ian
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be looking at the board meeting agenda for March 12th, 2024. I'll entertain a motion for approving the board meeting agenda. Is there a first? And Bernie?
Who was that be?
Bernie? And then Ian?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, please say yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
Do we have to do roll call?
Yes, because we were listening,
Because
yes.
Bernie.
Right, every action is gonna be a roll call.
Right,
Yep.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
No, that's okay.
Okay. Chantel? Here.
Aye.
Hi. I'm sorry. I hear my baby crying right now. Bernie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Summer?
Aye.
Ian?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item number 4, the minutes for January 16th, 2024. I'm hoping you had a chance to review those this past couple days. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes for January 16th, 2024. Is there a first?
This is Chantel, I motion to this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Bernie, thank you. Roll call.
Chantel?
Aye.
Bernie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Summer?
Aye.
Ian?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5. If we have hearing of any persons wishing to address the board.
I'm not aware of any, Eric, are you aware of any?
No, there is not.
Right, moving on to number 6, item number 6. Any written communications?
None.
None. Moving on to item number 7. Warrant reports for 1/11/2024 to March 4th, 2024.
I'll go let you walk through it as usual and then we can.
These are the ones that went to the email, correct, that we were able to
Yes,
review, right?
yes.
Is there any questions? Can we go with is there any questions first that we have about the warrants? Questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for approval of the warrant reports for 1/11/2024 to 3/4/2024. Is there a first?
So moved, Ian Whitney.
Second?
This is Chantel, I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let's do roll call, please.
Chantel?
Aye.
Bernie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Summer?
Aye.
Ian?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 8, read the report on WSCS 2022-2023 nonprofit corporation tax filing form 990. Scott,
Looks like
please.
Scott is not here yet.
No? Okay.
So if we could just move it.
Move back, okay. All right, we'll move it down.
Also,
Item 9 follows that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna be moving on to item number 10 and coming back to item number 8 and 9. Item number 10, the audit engagement letter with Fort Chart Corona Faith and Zaccharian for fiscal year 2023-24.
So that is in your packet in front of you, was also sent out. It has the pricing schedule as well as the scope of audit. Is there anything, Jody, that you would want to point out on this?
It's slightly higher than the year before, but that's how it goes with inflation. So no, other than that, it's the usual. And
It is the board's responsibility to choose the auditor, and we do have to report to our respective county offices, both Madera and Fresno, that the board approved the audit firm for the following year. And so what this is, we've used Borstar for a long time. They rotate partners as far as leads on the audit as they are required to by law. But we always feel like they've done very good work on our behalf. Would recommend using them again.
I would like to entertain a motion for approval of the audit engagement letter to continue with Fort Chart Corona Faith as a caring for fiscal year from 2023-2024. Is there a first?
so moved.
Thank you, Bernie. Is there a second?
This is Mary, I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let's take a roll call, please.
Chantel? Aye. Bernie?
Aye.
Mary? Aye. Summer? Aye. Ian?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item number 11, the info, the second interim overview and budget update by Jody.
Great. I'm going to share my screen here. Yes, that's about as good as it gets. Okay, so here are the three schools. We've seen this format before, but if anyone has any questions, please ask. Also, this report, along with the budget update, I included that in the packet, the budget update through 229. But this is aligned with that budget, so we can probably just stick with this unless there's any particular questions as we go. So might move it along a little easier. So I'll just do an overview. So Mountain Home School in the left column, other than description section there, has actuals to date. So the second interim report is as of January 31st. And there's two interim reports that are required by CDE every year. And then there's the final unaudited actual report. So this is the second of the two interim reports. The first one's as of October 31st. Second one is, which this one is January 31st. So it has actuals to date. The reports are available here. They're about 45 pages apiece. I have reduced them to this to give you the highlights. And so we can go through and see any changes that might have occurred or anything that's unusual. So actuals to date is showing 1.3 million in and 1.2 million of expenditures. That means that we are at this point have in excess revenues over expenditures of 113,000. At this point, as you know, we're normally paid in arrears by CD, so we're always running a little late. So sometimes it's even negative at this point, but this is about the time of year when we start to show an excess. So that's about where it should be. On the projected year totals, we have 2.6 million of revenues expected and 2.4 million in expenditures, meaning there will be an excess of almost $300,000. The beginning balance from the unaudited actual at the end of last year was $2,125,000. When you add the $300,000 approximately that we're getting this year in excess, will be at $2.4 million at the end of the year. Assigned reserve, the reserves are shown there at the bottom in the middle of that section. And as you recall, we made some assigned reserves. The board approved some assigned reserves for they were for the purchase of, well, in this case, it was the capital improvements up in Oakhurst. And then for economic unexpected items that may come up. So that's the $2 million there, $2,025,000. And then that means the unassigned at this point, the projection is we'll only have $170 that's unassigned at this point. So that's pretty close. Just good math, I guess. So it comes down to $2 million in reserves. The ADA that we're expecting now is 200.64. We had projected 208.43. So we're short almost 888 this year over less than our projections. So we're 8 down from mountain. So then it has cash flow. At the beginning of the year, we had 2,358,000. At the end of the year, we're expecting 2,147,000. That's a pretty conservative estimate, but it's a great cash position. It means our cash reserves as a percentage of expenditures is 91%. So in other words, the cash we have is as much as 91% of an entire year. So we can go 91% a year without receiving cash and survive. That's what that's coming to us there. So total, there's a multi-year projection. The multi-year projection is this year and the next 2 years. So that's showing at the end of the third year out, we would have, let's see, we can see that next year we'd have 68,000 as the excess over expenditures and revenues. The year after that, it's 324,000 excess of revenues over expenditures. So both years we're showing excess monies in. Next, what's happening on the budget is because up in Oakhurst, our permitting process for the capital expenditures, facilities work we're doing has been delayed. So I took most of that off the budget for this year. So it's been shifted into next year. So same numbers, approximately the same numbers, but just now they're shifted forward. So it just shows that's the effect is those next 2 years out. Okay, for Glacier, and you can see these for year actuals today, 73,000 in excess at this point. Projected year totals ending with 66,000 in excess. The balance of the unaudited actuals at the end of last year was 700,000. We're expecting at the end to have 767,000 as our ending fund balance. We also on that components of the ending balance, you can see the 580,000. That's our economic uncertainties and capital projects set aside that we did earlier in the year. The average daily attendance for Glacier is down 6.75 versus our expectations. So both that one is a little bit lower. And then we have beginning cash 743,000, ending cash 686,000. That's approximately 60% of our projected year expenditures. So that's pretty good. Total revenues in the next year are 1.2 million, expenditures 1.3 million. For Glacier, it means that they would have a net loss next year because of the capital expenditures. And so I have a little note there that says capital expenditure included in that. That's why it loses money next year, but it still keeps a healthy reserve. Then at the end of the second year out, it is at 21,000. Now, Glacier is much tighter. It's a smaller school, 80 kids, between 80 and 90. It used to be 100, but that was COVID, a little higher than 100 at that point. But that was, exceptional year. We've been running between 80 and 90 since. That's pretty close to, it usually has an excess at the end of the year, but it's got a big reserve, so it's okay to run this way for a while, but it's just the nature of this school to be a little tight. Okay. Then I'll go on to Endeavor. So Endeavor at this point has less income than less revenues than expenditures at this point. And a big part of that is because we haven't received a lot of the money from Fresno Unified that we normally would have at this point. They owe us a fairly sizable amount They took quite a while to reconcile the in lieu property taxes that they get, and we have not received them this year at all. And last year, we haven't received any for the last half of last year. So we've been talking with them, they're a little, it's been delayed. So that's why at this point, we expect it to be here.
And can I,
They say the check is in the mail. So
this is just point of reference here. This is an example, and there are many others over the course of time. This is an example of why a healthy cash reserve is necessary. We would be in a heap of trouble with Fresno Unified being so arrears in what they owe us if we were tight on cash.
Yeah, so Madera County moves that cash right along to us pretty quickly. Fresno County sends a check, they don't put it directly in your account. Personally, it's just the way they operate. And in this case, it's because I think it's a turnover or something that happened, it took them quite a while to reconcile this and then send us the money, but I would say that's quite an expensive time. At the end of last year, if you look at for the in lieu of property tax and some of the other pass-through monies that we were supposed to get, they were short $500,000 in what they had sent us by closed a business on June 30th. That's what the other. There's always a little bit. There's usually a month, but that's a big number. So we're talking to them and trying to get that to move along. They are our authorizer, so they I think they're aware of that. So we haven't discussed it. So that's just something I'm going to bring up because obviously this late in the year you're still showing negative. That's the reason. At the end of the year, we're expecting 369,000 in excess of fund balance for the year's operations. The beginning balance of unaudited from July 1st of 23 is 1,682,000. At the end, we're expecting to be 2,052,000. You see the components of the fund balance there that reconciles to the set aside support and put aside there. The ADA, our estimated funded ADA is going to be 333. We expected 332, so we're really close. It was pretty much. Well, and the reason for that is Endeavor is full. It can't really get any more full than it is, so it's really easy to estimate that. You just maximize it. So it's not being that. So the other schools have a little bit more room to estimate there. So cash flow, we're expecting at the end of this year to have 1.5 million in cash. We're showing that money coming in from Fresno Unified, so but still showing a couple of months not being received. So that's how that cash is right now. That's 36% of a year in cash reserves for Endeavor. Now that's lower, obviously, than the other two schools, but Endeavor is a bigger operation and it's only been around for 4 years. So it takes a while to fully accumulate capital and other things. Total revenues in year 2, multi-year projection, 4.5 million. Expenditures 4.2 million. A net of 300,000 approximately. The year after that, 4.6 million. In revenues, expenditures 4.3 million. And meeting another 342. Very similar sort of projection for both of those years. They don't show a capital expenditure at this point, so that's why it stays pretty close. The other thing I do want to explain is next year I'm showing 0 in COLA, the cost of living adjustment, even because as you hear the budget for the state is that. And it seems to be getting worse. They're showing a 0.76 COLA, which is virtually nothing. Now I'm just showing nothing. So it's just the same income this next year as this year. And then the year after that showing 2.73 for the COLA. I did show that. So it's a little bit more. The other thing we're going to discuss for the end of the year, this is just a projection. This isn't based on the approved budgets, of course, because of year 2, year 3. But in there's also an adjustment to the schedules because of this point, and we'll discuss that in great detail, and the board will have to approve that, of course. But at this point, it looks like our schedules, our payroll schedules are a little behind because the other schools that are in our market, Fresno Unified, Yosemite, they all did very large adjustments in the last couple of years based on all the extra income that came in those years. And as you know, and the COLAs were quite high over those years, 13% 2 years ago, 8% a year ago. So pretty big colors. And so we ended up incrementing up 5 and 5, not a big number, but 5 and 5, because we're always a little bit behind. We want to make sure conservatively that funding's really going to come. So we'll probably be coming with an adjustment the next board meeting. But I've already projected that in these two, just to make sure that it pencils out. And so that's already includes an increase in costs for our payroll, total payroll, of 8% higher next year, and then just 3% higher the year after that. So a one-time adjustment next year. That's shown in this multi-year projection. Okay, I just wanted to explain that. Well, like I said, those are not approved yet, but they're just in their next projection. That's it at this point. So the highlights, I moved the capital expenditures into next year for Oakers. That shows in the small group projections that will hit the two Oakers schools next year. This year, I'm not showing any capital projects or in the next 2 years. The reason not in the next 2 years or this year for Endeavor was because of the discussion we had where we had, now it's called Grow Capital, but we had capital, what is the name? The old name? Charter School Capital. Charter School Capital came in and gave us their presentation. And I thought that they would buy, lease it back and lease a loan, and then we'd make it so we don't have a big cost, a cash cost or an out-of-pocket cost to Endeavor in that arrangement, which is great. It lets us keep, as you can see, we have 36% cash. I'd like it to be much higher, more like the other schools. That'll work out. But if we have to take $1 million or $2 million out of our cash out of the account, while certainly not terrible, it would be more than we would like. So, okay, that's pretty much the three schools in a nutshell. Like I said, the budget through 229 is virtually the same thing as this one, so I'm not going to go through that unless there's any questions on that. I think I hit all the highlights.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to actually go. Is there any questions? Very good. We're going to move on to, because there's no action that needs to be done on this one particularly. So we're going to go and move back to item number 8. And thank you, Scott. Thank you. That's here. So we're going to do the report on WSCS 2022-2023 nonprofit corporation tax filing form 990, and Scott will give us some information on that.
Thank you very much. All right, so.
I'm going to share that. So if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Well, there's a lot of numbers on this form. Try to keep it simple. I'm going to highlight a few items that are on the. This is the federal nonprofit return that we do for the consolidated schools, Russell territory schools. And also there's also a California form 199 that we do as well. So I was going to go through and highlight a few items. And the main thing here is that the data on this form needs to reconcile back to your audit. So I was here in January and I went through and I kind of gave a presentation on the audit report. And so I'm going to highlight a few items in here that kind of tie back to the audit. I'm not sure we have that here, but trust me, they do tie. So on page 1 here, on line 12, you'll see that $8.7 million as total revenue. That matches the audit report on page 4. If you were to go back, you want to make notes about that. If you want to just double check, it agrees to your audit report on page 4, the consolidated total numbers. The numbers on line 18, the total, and you can see this is the comparative to prior year. I'm not talking about the current numbers. Line 18, you got $6.7 million, and that number agrees to the total expenses on page 4 of the audit report as well, and that of the pension costs. And then on line 19, which is your revenues less expenses, where you see you brought in more revenue than expenses right here. About $2 million. That matches the bottom of page 4 on the audit report. And then the net assets, line 22, the $5.8 million. That also agrees to the audit report on page 3. So let's go over to page 6, Jody. I'm just gonna highlight some items on here. And there's a lot of questions going back and forth, a lot of the schedules on page 6, section B in the middle. Here we go, a little bit more right there. Section B, I just wanted to point out, the reason we're going for this, if you didn't know, on 11A, the organization, the school needs to provide this to the board before we can file it. The board has to review it, they have to look through it. So that's the process we should be going through right now, before we file the form, the board has to. So I just want to point out, there's a question about that. Now, the tax returns, even though they're not about the call tax returns, they're based on the audit report. So we start the process with that, but we also send a questionnaire out to Jody that has a whole slew of questions about like W-2s issued, 1099s issued, volunteers, donations, that kind of administrative policies we have. They're all kind of integrated in these questions and answers that go through the report as well. So there's a lot behind the scenes that goes into preparing this. On page 9, Jody. Page 9. Almost there.
See that one? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of schedules.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Page 9. Page 9 is a breakout of your revenues. And so the IRS and the state wants to know basically of your revenues that you generate. And if you go just scroll up just a little bit, there you can see the headers on top. There you go. So you have your total revenues, you have your, and all the revenue that the school generates is all exempt functional type of revenue. So there's none of it that's subject to, for instance, column C, you have unrelated type activity. So if the school were to buy some property and rent it out to somebody, that's not what the school's designed to do. If it's on that column, there's tax, you just essentially have to. But all of it is related to your exempt with this. And the bottom of this page, Jody, you scroll down there on line 12. That total matches the total revenue we talked about earlier. And it's all exempt. Let's go to page 10. Next page, Jody. And page 10, yeah, you can leave a header there. Okay. So page 10 is your total expenses, then it gets broken down between program and management. And then there's not much going on with fundraising. But we go through all the activity that happens during the year and we test the allocations between management and program. Program are things like teachers, principals, teaching the kids, any costs associated with that. Management is like Jody's time, the administrative time, custodians, that sort of thing. And then there's other costs like insurance and utilities get allocated. Nevertheless, the total is now, if you go to the bottom of that page, Jody, on line 25, that matches page 5 of the audit report. Those totals at the bottom and broken down by program services and by management. All right, let's go to page 11. Page 11 is just a detailed balance sheet. So line 16, scroll down, okay. Line 16 gives you total assets to $7 million. Line 26 is your total liabilities, which is 1.2 million, and line 32 is your net assets, 5.8 million. And this matches the balance sheet on page 3 of the audit. So all these numbers reconcile the audit. There's actually a question within the details of this tax return that says, was the entity audited? So when they get the tax return, they'll know that these are based on audit. So that's the highlight of the 990. I was going to just make a brief comment about the 199. I'm not sure if you have that. I don't think it's required with the board. Look at that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's on here, probably.
Okay. And the 199, the numbers again tie out to the numbers. It's much more condensed version of the 990. But the numbers, this is the 199 goes to the state, and the numbers reconcile back and forth to the 990 and the audit report. But the 990 is there's a formal process which we're going through right now to approve it. Any questions on the 990?
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Great job. So we're going to be moving to action item 9 to actually for an action. So for acceptance of the WSCS 2022-2023, the nonprofit corporation tax filing form 990, the kind of lister. I would like to entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Bernie, thank you. Is there a second?
Whitney, a second.
Thanks, Ian. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let's do a roll call. Second. Chantal? Aye. Bernie?
Aye.
Mary? Aye. Summer? Aye. Ian?
Aye.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott, for everything. Appreciate that. Thanks for coming.
You guys have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Okay, moving on to item number 12. For the approval after the fact of purchase of replacement phone system for Endeavor. So we're going to be hearing from,
So,
okay,
yes. So, Eric, can you bring up the Sebastian? Well, I guess you have it in the pack. Some of you
Yes,
have
we
it.
have it in
I didn't
packet.
have it in my
Yes,
packet.
we have.
Great. So in your packet on page 5 is the total cost for this project. And so the reason, well, you would see this item anyway, but the reason you're seeing it after the fact instead of prior is because the school staff, executive director has a $15,000 spending limit without getting prior board approval. So when all the warrants that you see are either contracts we've already made or they're under that single item limit. However, we did move forward with my approval to purchase this prior to the board meeting, and I wanted to explain that to you. Here at Endeavor, a number of phone lines went down and were non-functional. So various staff with their desk phones and just lines coming into the school were no longer functional, and we were told by Sebastian that the whole system was actually at risk of failure. And so in consultation with Eric and the tech team, I then, we felt like this was an urgency. We either call a board meeting to make this purchase or we make the purchase. And so we came up with this solution that cost $23,000 to make the changes that needed to happen. I consulted with Summer. I called in advance, let her know the situation, let her know what the cost was going to be, and sought her agreement that it would be acceptable to make that purchase. She approved that we did that, and so we went ahead with this project. Did I explain that, Eric? And
Yeah, that sounds good. Basically, we could not fix our current system. It was failing, it was,
And there was risk to losing communication to the whole school. So that was why we did it, and yeah.
We also did reach out to other vendors. We had worked a little bit with Sebastian, was very pleased with their work and their responsiveness. We explored a lot of different options in terms of what the replacement would be, whether all voice over IP or not. This system is a bit of a hybrid. It does still work off of regular phone lines, but internally it works off of our network and can work wirelessly or through our system. And so we felt like if something were to fail, like internet-wise, our phone systems would still continue. It also allows us, as we upgrade Okers, to be able to tie our systems together if we want that flexibility to be able to have like someone down here answer for Oker, a variety of things and transfer between the two sites. So it gave kind of a bit of a hybrid between the current voice over IP options and kind of some traditional features also. So we felt like this was the best option. I do welcome any questions, if anyone has any questions regarding this.
This would transfer over if, right, because I think that's what we discussed on the phone, is that they would transfer over to any buildings that would be purchased for Endeavor.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we also want to make sure this is something we could take with us. And also would meet any projected future needs. So it's expandable up to like 200 extensions. And so And that was another thing, our current system, we were running out of expansion ports anyways. And I was trying to hold off until Endeavor made that move before we did this, but this system should be fairly easy to reconfigure in the new location.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Is there a first?
This is Chantal, I motion to.
Thank you, Chantal. Is there a second?
This is Mary, a second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let's do roll call, please.
Chantel,
Aye.
Bernie,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Summer,
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Thank
Moving on to item 13, to amend the single item spending limit policy. Go ahead.
So this item that we just dealt with brought up, it brought up what we think is a potential concern, and that is $15,000 for a school organization is a pretty low limit on if there's something big that happens. And so we did not have any emergency sort of contingencies in that spending limit. So what we have here as a draft proposal before the board is the top line, single item spending limit is, it's the same language that we already have in policy. We've suggested raising the single item limit to 25,000. But otherwise, the single item limit language is the same that we already have in policy. What's new is the paragraph below, emergency spending authority, which outlines a higher limit under emergency conditions and also outlines what those conditions would be and a process, an alternative process to make emergency expenditures. So if I may read that second paragraph for your consideration. So, emergency spending authority. In the event of an emergency situation where expending school funds is necessary to address an urgent, sudden, and serious event that necessitates immediate action to remedy harm or avert imminent danger to life, health, property, or inhibits the ability to continue school operations in a safe and effective manner, the board authorizes the executive director to expend up to $50,000 on a short-term basis to address the emergency. In this situation, the above-mentioned single item limit will be suspended only as it relates to expenditures directly related to the emergency situation at hand. This emergency spending authority shall not be used when it is not reasonably feasible to arrange a board meeting to get the board's approval in advance for the spending in question. The executive director also shall attempt to get input from the administrative staff as to the nature of the emergency and the available and appropriate remedies available. Additionally, the executive director shall attempt to consult with the board chairperson if possible. The emergency expenditures will come to the board at the next scheduled board meeting wherein the board will discuss and, if appropriate, approve the expenditures in question. Other than the specific exceptions noted in this emergency spending authority, all of the other standard policies, laws, and requirements related to the school district will remain in force. So we were obviously here making an attempt to remedy any potential foreseeable issue that would need immediate action, since the board meets roughly every 2 months. This is a draft, so if there are any parts of this draft for your discussion board that you would want to discuss, like the spending limit under normal conditions, what you think about the $25,000 number, or the whole concept of an emergency authority, this is all under board domain. This is staff doing what we think is prudent, a prudent direction, but it's up to the board to decide all that's here.
Is there any discussion, can we do the discussions now before we do motion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any discussions on the draft amendment? Any questions?
Sure. Joe, your judgment, these numbers are appropriate as well, or not? They're too high or too.
I really had a higher number thought of for the $50,000 emergency, just because some emergency, pretty big time emergencies. But I understand that, and in that case, we would just have to go to the board and give, a requirement. At this point, the 23,000, obviously above, no, I'm talking about the 23,000.
Oh, yeah.
The actual cost we've spent so far. So I think 50, well, it's twice as much as the normal one, that's better than we have now, so clearly it's great. But, and I understand where the board would be reticent to go with a big number, but the idea of the emergency spending authority was that it's only in regard to an actual bona fide emergency that the staff is aware of, and all is an emergency. And then those discussions have to address it, discuss. She likely call for president and confer, and then nothing else other than to address that specific emergency is change. So even if if you had a normal bunch of expenditures in that period, but the only one is about the emergencies, this one, it's only that one that's affected by the emergency policy. The others are all under normal rules. And also, even that one is under every other normal rule, because there's a bunch of other rules that apply to our expenditures. Because there's slime accounting rules, there's rules related to where it came from within the state, obviously it all has to be verifiable for the benefit of the school, and all those things still exist. So the question is just how big an authority on per emergency basis is this about?
And then
So, yeah.
what's the and what the extent of of the emergency, how much really do we would need for an emergency to happen? So, for example, like the phones was like 23,000, so it was over his budget at that particular time. So I can understand why the 25,000 increased. So then he can then approve those types of situations for an emergency, because not having phones is an emergency. Then coming to what would actually constitute constitute 50,000. So trying to think of things like, okay, what would actually be higher than that to call for an emergency action that the executive director needs to then approve?
Yeah, and those could be, it's a huge variety, it could be an emergency, a fire, it could be a flood, it could be, I couldn't imagine. So our a helicopter crash landed our school in Medvac. So, yeah, I mean, there's lots of options.
So even,
I don't know how much it costs.
even in the new language, the first choice is to call another board meeting. And that's doable. But I guess the concern is, in some conceivable, if there's an emergency, that's the project. And getting a board meeting in between board meetings is somewhat of a project in itself, like that everybody's clear and meeting all the Brown Act rules. And so I guess the idea was if there was really a bona fide emergency that needed attention now, don't have the project of having to get a board meeting together if it's that urgent, when you can just take care of that problem and bring it to the board meeting. If it's not an emergency, it's just an urgency, then I think that you call a board meeting.
I mean, I figure realistically, what it would take maybe a minimum of a week to get a board meeting, an interim board meeting put together. So we're looking at expenses that need to be addressed in less time than that. And my question is, we think $50,000 is an appropriate amount. It sounds like it probably is, it's a good ballpark for now. I guess we can always adjust it if it,
Sure.
either if it looks like, we need to.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that.
I just want to make sure that we have enough flexibility, but if we're going to adopt a plan, it should be flexible enough that we don't have to keep adjusting it. To the extent, well, recognize that emergencies by their nature are foreseeable. But if we think that's just a number that's good that we start on.
Yeah, it moves the ball downfield, that's for sure, but it doesn't do what we want, I'm not sure. That's a tough call. I would say, yeah.
And
I'd
so,
say this is a minimum.
and so
That strikes me as correct. Yeah.
So, for the board's edification here, Brown Act would allow an emergency meeting that we could call, that requires 24-hour notice. So we could do a meeting in 24 hours, but then I would anticipate that meeting is probably distance. And so that adds more Brown Act rules. And then just knowing within 24 hours, are we going to even be able to get a quorum? Those are real ifs in a hurry up mode. But we could, and technically you could call a meeting in 24 hours in an emergency situation.
I think the other thing that, if you read into this, it's saying that it's not one single cost, it's whatever costs are specifically related to the emergency, so you have 3 different items in the emergency. None of which, all of 3 cumulatively could not be higher than $50,000.
Right.
That's what this is saying.
But I
Instead of a single item limit, it's saying this is
Spending
the amount
right,
of the
spending.
emergency spending for
Right.
a short term period.
I agree with that. I think, even though we could conceivably call a meeting within 24 hours and also, besides the logistical problem with that, is that really how we want to address emergencies? Or it seems like this is a judgment that we want to give staff the flexibility to address emergencies up to this amount without, and then we can address it at the regular board meetings. That's a delegation decision. It makes sense to give flexibility in some amount. And I'm wondering if we should do a little more personally. But 50,000 might be a good place to start. See emergencies come.
We could try to do some sort of scenario out what the costs are. It's just emergencies are by their nature unexpected.
No.
So it's hard to figure it out. But I'm not sure really, like I said, what could it be, cost that much? And then later down the line, you go, and then, we get author. The question is sort of retroactive authorization is like Mike says, yes, do all those things. We don't know how much they are. We need to get this handled. And then it may very well be above that limit. It would be hard to know beforehand what the authorization actually is. Yeah. So that I think mitigates for a little bit bigger number, but I think 50 is a great start. We've never used this before, so obviously.
And hopefully we don't need to. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's been 20-something years
Right.
that you've been doing this, so
Right.
like, how many times really have you used
never,
that?
no,
Right.
we're always able to live within it. Right, but having the issue
Yeah, having the
presented,
issue
it's an exposure that we wanted to address.
And theoretically, in the $25,000 limit, you could hit many items that would get over the 50, just within the normal limit.
Well, I like the fact that, that the executive director is still following in line with administrative staff, the board chairperson, so it's still going through the chain of everybody.
Right, there's still accountability.
Communication, still accountability, it's not just one person, so I like that, the verbiage there.
This is Bernie. I just wanted to chime in. This seemed fine to me. Am I correct in my understanding that the executive director can already do this, but only up to 15,000? Is that the current policy? So we're not it's not a new policy. We're just extending the ceiling, raising the ceiling for the amount that can be spent on an emergency basis. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there was I'm sorry, it's my fault for being here and not making it down. There's some of the audio I don't pick up, so the conversation between Ian and Jody there, I might have missed something, and I apologize if this is redundant. But do you already have in the budget anything that, a budgeted item that would allow the executive director to spend money at his discretion without a board meeting, like an emergency fund, something allocated for that purpose? And again, I'm sorry if you were talking about that, I missed some parts of the discussion.
We don't have anything in the budget that would allow that on an emergency basis.
Okay,
What we have is a single item spending limit of $15,000. That's what exists in policy now.
And the way I can finish that thought, the way that our bylaws work is we don't have a limit that, our budget doesn't work in the sense that it's a legal limit to our expenditures, it's a guide. And so we are using our budget in that way, so it's not like, the budget doesn't have the force of law, the allowance in that case to go ahead up to 100,000, some number that would be in that budget. It's more of there's the adopted budget, which changes throughout the year, and under the nonprofit, rules. It allows us to have more of a guiding budget rather than a legal limit, if that makes sense.
It
Rather-
does, yeah. This policy seems fine to me. I just wanted to make sure I understood how you operate normally under these circumstances. With 3 years ago, we had that wind event. You can imagine something like that happening again. 100-mile-an-hour sustained winds. At the high school, we're still finishing, at Yosemite High, we're still finishing repairs, and it was over 3 years ago. But sometimes I know the executive director has to just get something done quickly, because there are emergencies. So I think this is reasonable, and I think there are safeguards built into it that should satisfy everyone. And the bottom line is, if somebody, in the worst case scenario, if the executive director spends some money and people didn't think it was appropriate or it was not an emergency, there is a cap, and we'll have another board meeting soon, and it can be addressed. So I don't think this will be a problem, and I don't think it'll be, I think it's necessary, actually.
Okay, so, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we're going to entertain a motion for approval. Is there a first?
This is Mary, a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mary. Is there a second?
This is Chantel, a motion to approve.
Thank you, Chantel. Roll call, please.
Chantel, aye. Marie,
Aye.
aye. Summer,
Aye.
Ian.
Aye.
Item number 14, information.
Quick question. Do we need signature on this document?
This is.
Okay, we've been struggling to get your signatures. Thank you.
Item 14, WSCS server cloud migration, by Aaron.
And I just shared my screen, and this is Melissa Pulver. And I'm going to go through the presentation to make sure that you have foundational information on where we're going. Not everyone is aware of what a cloud-based migration is. And so I just want to make sure that you understand the language associated with this process so that you can make an appropriate decision on this. And then my last slide provides you an opportunity to ask questions. But if you choose to interrupt me during the slides, then that's fine too. The overview of this presentation, we're going to answer and cover these concepts. What motivated this change? What do our servers do? What is cloud-based storage? All covered is a vendor that we work with, and I'll talk a little bit about the services that they provide. I'll navigate some of the pros and cons and then pause appropriately for questions. So what prompted this change? Like any of the appliances that you might have in your home, a toaster, a refrigerator, a dishwasher, at some point in time it needs to be replaced. It's not designed to work forever. Likewise, our servers have reached their end of life, and we are at a fork in the road. We either purchase new servers that are physically on site, and those are called on-prem or on-premise servers. Our other option is that we pivot to a cloud-based system that is going to store a lot of our information off-site. So what do servers do? Ours manage our Microsoft computers, the internal permissions and the security protocol that we have for those devices. Our servers also function as a drive for storage so that individuals can collaborate real time on documents and files that we share across the organization. The communication pathway for our devices to interface with our printers properly. We also utilize our servers for that process. Why is this an essential tool or resource? It's essential for our organization because we collaborate together on common files that need to be in a protected capacity. It provides us with data efficiency. If we're all talking about the same document and the same set of numbers, as individuals update those files or documents, everybody needs timely and efficient data to make decisions. And then it also is a device management component. On a future slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about a managed service provider. All covered right now functions as another set of eyes, observing what's happening with our servers in real time, mitigating any issues that arise. And they also want to monitor threats and observe any updates or transitions. And I'll talk a little bit about all covered as our managed service provider in a little while. You might already use a cloud-based service. You might use Google, where you collaborate with family, friends, or maybe you're taking an online class and you have access to those resources that are not stored on your device or in your home, but they're accessible on your phone or your tablet or your computer. Apple, YouTube, Microsoft, those are other service providers that provide you an opportunity to store information. Maybe it's pictures, files, videos, folders, etc. And this is a similar concept because our data is going to be stored by a corporation or a company that we partner with, and we're going to pay them for that service that they provide us so that we have access to that information. All covered, like I mentioned a moment ago, is a managed service provider, and we spend $4,700 per month. We partnered with them so that they can have another set of eyes on our information for security purposes. If it's our desire, if we pivot to a cloud-based storage solution, we would not utilize their services moving forward. And we would be able to take those funds and invest those or use those in another capacity. So there's a savings moving forward if we choose to go with a cloud-based storage solution instead of buying brand new servers that we have here on our property. So what are the pros and the cons? The on-prem server option is listed first in bold letters. And the cloud-based services are located in that second portion. The middle column showcases our anticipated cost per year. And then in that far right column, what is the projected cost over a 5-year period of time? So the on-prem server, if we continue doing business the way that we're doing it, but we just replace the physical servers, we would spend $362,000 over a 5-year period of time. By pivoting to the cloud-based services, you can see that there is a significant cost savings of over approximately $206,000 over a 5-year period of time. So one of, but not the only reason why our team is advocating for the cloud-based service solution is this cost savings to the organization. At the very bottom of this slide, the anticipated cost for this fiscal year, if we pivot to the cloud-based storage solution, we anticipate that the out-of-pocket cost will not exceed $14,000. And then when we look at fiscal spending for the following year, we anticipate that that total cost would be approximately $34,000. Pros and cons. Accessibility, we would have access to all of this content as long as the internet is up and the power is on. In the event of a fire, when we utilize a cloud-based service, we do not have to worry about any impact to the servers, either by fire or water. Water is obviously the instrument that mitigates that fire situation. So post-fire, you usually have water damage and fire damage. All of our essential data would be available in the cloud at all times, and then the cost savings. By pivoting, we are able to save a substantial amount of money over a multi-year period of time. Redundancy. At this present time, we're planning to work with a reputable corporation for our cloud-based solution. That corporation, that company will have redundancy on their own to ensure that that data is protected. data recovery. By pivoting away from all covered, we will then regain the power to manage our own data in the event of a data failure. Previously, due to the arrangements and the policy that we had with them, we, Western Sierra Charter Schools, did not have the ability to manage that process of independently gaining access to our data that is stored off-site by ourselves. We would have to go through them in order to recover that data. Growing, we are nearly maxed out on data storage locally in our present servers. In the future, under a cloud-based service storage solution, we would not need to worry about purchasing additional on-site solutions. For example, another server or another rack or additional hard drives. All we do is we simply incrementally increase those charges based on that company or that corporation that we've partnered with. Accessibility. Previously, staff members in our organization are required to use a virtual private network or a VPN in order to gain access to our servers when they are off-site. By utilizing this cloud-based solution, we would no longer need accessibility through the VPN, which actually saves our IT department time and energy, because we don't have to sit elbow to elbow with those various employees in order to fix the VPN connectivity situation. Security, any of the corporations that we're looking at will offer multi-factor authentication. So another layer of security, making sure that only staff members who have access to that information would be able to get in. This is an added layer of security. Users will be directed to our email or our cell phones in order to prove that we have permission to get in there. Is this a standard norm? There are school districts that are pivoting this way. In the copy of the document that you have, I can't promise you that the link came through, but Amazon Web Services is one service provider, and I was able to research what other school districts are doing. And so there are a number of large school districts that are choosing this as an option. So before I reach my questions slide, just providing you with closing thoughts. Again, our desire is a cloud migration. The IT department believes that this is an essential pivot. The research points us this direction for data security and cost savings. I won't read those two sentences out loud. Those are the $2 figures that we're looking at for this fiscal year, as well as next fiscal year. I'd like to pause and provide you an opportunity to provide any feedback or ask any questions.
Just a couple other, just so you points while we're kind of giving those numbers, and Aaron King's been really instrumental, so I wanted to thank Aaron for all of his work on that. My understanding, like with the server, is that it basically, it's kind of a pay to use, like how much you need. So that number is kind of like if we do everything exactly the same, like what we've been doing, kind of what we anticipate the cost. But that cost may actually decrease because you only use what you use, like you only pay for what you use each month. And so Aaron was trying to do his best based off of a variety of factors of what he anticipated that we wouldn't go over that amount, but we actually might save even more in addition. And then we also are actually, for some of our internal storage and network storage, we're doing kind of a hybrid. So even if the internet goes down internally, we'd still be able to access our files on like an internal, like cloud-based, a physical drive slash, it would also back up to the cloud. Does that sound accurate, Aaron? Yes.
Thank you very much. That's all Thanks, Aaron.
So moving on to action 15, item number 15, proceeding the procurement of the cloud-based server service. I would like to entertain a motion for approval to do this automation.
Just a quick question, what exactly are we approving this, approving this? Looking at, or are we approving?
Like at this point, they're just gonna procure it.
Well, I don't believe we have a contract yet, right? We've not been able to go forward without board knowing. So there's two things. There's the cost, which, as we were just talking about spending limit, this year's cost comes in under the existing $15,000. But it's a shift that we want the board to understand, moving from on-site servers, that's all ours, into the cloud base. Yeah.
So right now, we're voting to approve the move, and then are we gonna vote again on the definitive contract, or is it just that when we procure a contract and that'll be that?
I think we wanted your approval to proceed. We would be bringing the contract back to you as a future expense. We have to do that, right,
Once we have some,
right,
specific.
right. But it would be after the fact at that point, would approve us to go forward. But we would bring back the existing contract.
Right, I just want to clarify.
Yeah, very
What
good.
exactly it is.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to, really quick, I don't know what's going on with our camera, so I'm restarting that. I have it on my computer right now. So Bernie, I apologize if you missed any of that. So
I could hear the discussion.
yeah, I have to restart the camera for whatever. Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just letting you. So we can hear you now, Bernie, if you want to talk.
I think I got it, Eric. I could hear the audio. You guys were frozen on the screen. I did this in my business 2 years ago, and I think it's necessary. It's the way everything's going. You'll save money. It's more convenient. And from what I understand, it's much safer. I used to worry about having my own private server with all my confidential client information on it. And from everything I understand and the way it was explained to me, that the cloud-based services out there, I use Microsoft, but there's Google and others, they're safer than having your own server. You know, I don't know if any hackers want to get into a system like yours, but it's harder to get into the Microsoft servers than it is your own little local server. And so I think in the long run, this is a good idea. Even in the short run, it's a good idea.
For all of those reasons you just shared, Bernie, from your own experience, as you were looking to make that move, is exactly what our team discovered as well as they were looking into this.
Yeah, I will say in my experience, and everyone's different, I'm sure, I had to upgrade my internet to handle the upload of all the existing data to the cloud. That was more involved than, it took 2 weeks. I had an IT guy working full-time for 2 weeks just to upload 25 years of data from my little law office. And in your case, I'm sure there's even more data. And that led me to increase, higher level of service at Sierra Tel here in Oakhurst. And there were kind of a series of steps in order to be able to just upload efficiently and get everything into the cloud. So I just mentioned that in case that might apply to you too. So.
Any other questions?
We're going to just approve the fact to move forward with getting the contract and the process of that. So then when we come back, we will then have possibly the contract. So moving on, is there a first?
So moved, you ready?
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bernie. Any other discussions? Okay, Diane?
Chantel,
Aye.
Bernie,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Summer,
Aye.
Ian,
I,
Thank you. Moving on to item number 16, the revision to uniform complaint procedure, which is also abbreviated UCP policy by Holly Schiff. Welcome.
Thank you. So we have a current UCP policy already that's posted on the website. This is just an amendment to include the types of complaints that can be filed using the UCP. Not every complaint is a UCP complaint. What makes a UCP complaint unique is that it can be appealed to CBP. So it includes, the revision includes the types of complaints that can be filed, and then on the page 2, it also includes types of complaints that cannot be filed using the UCP. And in the packet, there's also a form that we would like to include with the revised policy, so the complainant actually checks the box as to which type of complaint they are finally continuing.
So for the board's edification, backdrop to this is that we had one complaint procedure and it was a uniform complaint procedure. Summer knows about this. And so the only process for any complaint was to use the uniform complaint procedure. However, we don't have to use the uniform complaint procedure except on those things that are required, which is what Holly just mentioned, things that can be appealed to the CBE. And so we are now going to be bringing before the board some other complaint procedure draft policies for other issues. And therefore can now, with the uniform complaint procedures outlined, here's the things you would use this for. Here's what we do not use it.
It's not substantive at all, just the note on the second page for the spacing change.
The spacing,
Yeah. The N, or the O is several spaces away from the N.
oh, thank you. Correct that.
That's not working.
Bernie, I apologize, the camera, I can't get it to do the close-up thing right now, I don't wanna mess with it too much, but it's just kind of a large picture right now.
Oh, that's okay, Eric. I've learned how to identify everybody by their voices now, so.
Are you continuing to get audio that's satisfactory, Bernie?
Yeah, no, I can hear you fine. Sometimes there are a couple of times it was muffled, but I hear you quite well, and so I'm aware of where we are and what we're doing. You're just updating your complaint procedure, right, on this?
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions? Jane? Thank you for doing this one. I would like to entertain a motion for approval of the revision of the uniform complaint procedure policy. Is there a first? This is Mary, motion to approve. Thank you, Mary. Is there a second? This is just, thank you, Chantal. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Diane, would you be able to?
Chantel. Bernie.
Aye.
Mary. Aye. Summer.
Aye.
Ian.
Moving on, item number 17, obsolete technology list.
Eric, what is this?
So these were computers that we used to use for our CTE class, they're now no longer, they basically don't have any more value, they're obsolete. And so we have to, if we're getting rid of certain types of, Mike could just describe a little bit more, but we have to, just give that to you to say, yes, these no longer have value, we dispose of them.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Any questions? I would like to entertain a motion for approving the obsolete technology list.
Good move, you.
Is there a second? I second. Thank you. Hearing no discussion, is there any discussion, so we know, Diane?
Chantel.
Aye.
Bernie.
Aye.
Mary. Aye. Summer.
Aye.
Ian.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 18, school safety plan by Nick Tilton.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Every year, we go over the comprehensive school safety plan. This year was no different. What we did do though is we streamlined it a little bit. We kind of revamped it so that it's a little bit more functional for us. One of the things that I've done, more than my responsibilities is making sure that we have a good relationship with first responders, fire departments, law enforcement, which I think we've done a pretty good job. So what we want to do is we want to share our plan with them to make sure that everyone responding is on the same page. So the objective of the comprehensive school safety plan, this year's procedural developments, they're all based off of the compliance tool that's provided by the California Department of Education. So that was the guide that we used. Using this, it outlines our preparation, our response, and our recovery from a wide range of adverse incidents. As I said, the major change is that it's streamlined using the compliance tool. So if it wasn't on the compliance tool as being a requirement, for the most part, it was taken out of the CSSP document. Also, we turned the CSSP into a clearinghouse of sorts. So if we do have an emergency incident, we have a one-stop shop for information, especially with contacts for emergency responders, fire departments, and such, mental health professionals, to help put us back together. So I wanted to say how important I think that is. It's also compartmentalized. A lot of the tactics that we have, we don't want to tell anybody wanting to do us harm, because we don't want to open ourselves up to a secondary attack. So that information has been taken out and it's included in an annex that will only be provided to agencies that have a need to know. So even though there is a list of responders that's included in the CSSP, not everybody will get the full reports. They don't need it, and they don't have the same threshold for security that we would want them to have. It's also updated. We've done a few things this year, especially with technology and cameras, and also legislative updates such as SB 323, which includes the requirement to have a limited noticeability to make sure that the plan is accessible to all, including sped populations or anybody who's having some mobility issues. So we want to address their concerns as well. It also brings into account all of the different trainings that we've had and people that we have contracted with to make sure that we are putting our best plan together with all the professional expert resources that we have talked to. As I mentioned before, it's a clearinghouse of sorts, so all the support documents are also provided into the plan in different annexes. It's a very large document. I'm pretty sure a lot of you folks are not incredibly interested in it, but if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
So Nick himself is a big part of improvements to our school safety plan. It's great having him able to give attention, and he's been working on this for weeks, putting time into this. And so school safety plan is, as he mentioned, is a required document. It's required to be updated, revisited every year. It does not require board approval, so this is just an information item. But the task that I asked of Nick is that we have this existing safety plan. We want to be working toward making it really our own, making it real for who we are as an organization and our context. And that's what he's been spending time working on. And it's it ends up being a much more useful, better document. So thank you, Nick, for your work in that regard.
Any questions? Thank you, Nick. And Holly as well. As a team. I'd like to entertain a motion for, actually, yes, no, I'm sorry, we don't need to do that. We actually, there's no action, so it's just information as of right now. So thank you very much. Moving on to item 19, employee handbook draft. Holly.
Do you want me to show?
If you can, that would be Great, I'm sorry.
So you all had
So I'm not sure if you guys have had a chance to review the handbook. It is quite long. A lot of the items in here are things that the school has already been doing. And of course would do in the event something were to come up. Since I started, the most questions I've received from employees are things that would typically be addressed in the handbook, so it'll be really nice just having a reference point. And also just for consistency. So I'm just gonna think, I'll just go through a few sections and just point out highlights that I think you guys will be interested in. So section 1, conditions of employment. We have employment at will and contractual employees that isn't changing. We have historically always had both at will and contractual employees, and we will continue to do so. On page 8, sorry, Eric.
It's all right.
We have the policy prohibiting unlawful harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. So this is a policy directed only towards employees. It also includes a harassment, discrimination, and retaliation complaint form, which is at the very end. A, scroll down to that and whatever.
Okay.
That would probably be easier.
Sure.
Section 2, page 16. Security protocols. As well as occupational safety. So I think our next item on the agenda is the new IIPP that we're rolling out. So the security of facilities as well as the welfare of employees depends on the awareness and sensitivity of every individual to potential security risks. And it is the duty of all employees to accept and promote the established safety regulations and procedures.
Sorry, where are you at?
Sorry, that's on page 17.
Sorry about that.
It's at the top. So really with the IIPP and this section in the handbook, we're just encouraging employees to of course follow safety practices and to essentially be a safety officer and to report any hazards or injuries and illnesses. And we want to encourage employees to do that. Section 3, employee wages and health benefits. This is page 18. So one thing to note, number 4 there is state disability insurance. We're still in the process of determining our enrollment options with EPD, and we will bring it to the board when we are ready, but we are confident a decision will be made by next school year. Page 23, holidays and leaves. This is a little bit different here. So paid sick leave is available to all school employees who work at least 30 days within the span of a single calendar year. That also includes part-time employees, and that's not something we have done in the past, so that is changing. If an employee is 0.5 FTE or greater, sick leave will be prorated based on FTE.
I think that must be lower on the page here.
Sorry.
All right. All right.
All eligible part-time employees will be credited 5 days of sick leave. Sorry. And then FMLA and CMRA on page 24. So this is the Family Medical Leave Act and the California Family Rights Act. Again, things we've already been doing, but I've had quite a few questions about this, so it'll be great to just, again, have a reference point. FMLA and CFRA provides 12 weeks of unpaid leave for qualifying reasons, which are listed in the handbook. Almost always FMLA and CFRA will run concurrently together and with any available sick time that the employee has. The employee must continue to pay for health insurance premiums, and the employee must have worked for the school for a year to be eligible for leave under FMLA and CFR. Returning from leaves of absence on page 38.
All right, 38. What's there? Got it?
So returning from a medical leave.
Oh, this is termination.
So it should be up at page 37 then, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
Returning from medical leave of absence, the employee must provide medical certification that the employee is able to return to work in full capacity, or a doctor's note that lists any restricted duties. We will of course engage in an interactive process to provide any reasonable accommodations that are necessary. Page 39, rules of conduct. So the specification of this list for conduct in no way alters the at-will employment relationship as to at-will employees of the school. If an employee is working under a contract with the school which grants procedural rights prior to termination, procedural terms in the contract shall apply. The employees who possess an employment contract which provides for other than at-will employment procedures and process for termination during the contract shall be specified in the contract. The rules of conduct in the employment contract will match the rules of conduct for at-will employees that are in the campus. And then if you scroll to the end area, there is an internal complaint review on page 41. So this is a general complaint for employees against employees. We obviously want to solve any complaints between coworkers, hopefully informally with their supervisors, but if the need arises, there is a complaint procedure listed for formal complaint if needed. And then down a little bit further is the harassment, discrimination, and retaliation complaint form. This form should, it's at the bottom, I believe, at the very bottom.
On page 41?
Nope, we keep scrolling down.
Oh,
Yeah, right there.
thanks.
So this form can be filed with HR or the executive director. A claim of harassment, discrimination, or retaliation will almost always warrant a formal complaint, and it may also trigger a Title IX complaint, which we'll talk about. I know that's a lot of information, so please let me know if you have any questions.
So obviously, you can tell that the employee handbook is really a long, large statement of various policies, and is an unwritten policy for us here, Western Sierra Charter Schools, is that whenever possible, when we have new policies for the board, we don't ask for action in that meeting. We present the policy, so it can be in your minds and discussion, and we will bring a request for action and approval at a subsequent meeting. So we'll be bringing this back to you in May, seeking your approval. So just so you know, so there's no action on it today, but certainly if you have any questions or thoughts, that's great.
Questions? Okay, moving on, to item number 20, injury and illness prevention program, policy draft for Nick.
So Nick and Polly have been working in concert on this. Polly as our HR person, Nick as our safety person, and we're talking about a policy, an injury and illness prevention policy, which is clearly has both safety and human resources involved. So they've both been working on it, and I think they're going to be presenting in tandem. Is that right? Nick taking the
Yeah, I
lead.
think start.
I appreciate your time again. So the CSSP was basically covering all of the horrible things that could happen, those very, very high dramatic events. The IIPP, and another way to look at it, is all the mundane things that happen that we can prevent, if we're a little bit cognizant of and we spend a little time preventing. I look at it as having threefold. One, it's a safer environment for employees, for students, and for families. It's to educate all those regarding safer practices and making sure that we have an entire culture of safe practices where everyone has the right and the responsibility to speak up if they see something that's unsafe. Three, having a system in place to provide care and minimize lost work and instructional time. So this is a comprehensive program using resources provided by Cal OSHA. Frequently and consistently presents topics for the general staff. So this is not just a single training session. This is something that would be ongoing, as you see in front of you, the worker training and instruction record that both sites independently would conduct over the course of the year. By using this template and the IIP program that they have, we're actually limiting ourselves to civil assessments if there were a violation. Basically indicating that by good faith, we're doing our best and we're working towards creating an environment that's safe and effective for all of our shareholders. This will not be ready this year, but I kind of want to give you the skeleton of what it is that we are working on. We do hope to have it ready to roll out next year. Right now, we're contacting our partners, which includes CRMA, SISC, so our lawyers and our insurance company. And then Charter School Development Center to give you the most recent information and guidance, so we have the best plan moving forward. We have already posted resources for supervisors to make sure that if someone does get hurt, they're going to be approved care providers. I'm also giving documents to supervisors to make sure that if someone does need to go to get care, that's going to be as quick and easy and, fortunately, excuse the pun, painless as possible. We're going to create a training plan because the best injury that you ever recover from is one that you never get in the first place. So we don't prevent that. This includes training on pertinent topics, also includes work-based violence, which is another requirement that we have. So we're going to integrate it into the IIPP, which will also shadow along with the CSSP. We're going to train employees to encourage a safety-minded environment, which we already do to a degree. We have a staff reporting form, so if anyone sees anything that is unsafe, they can report it to us, both the Endeavor site and the Oakers site. It allows us to take action on it as quickly as possible, and if someone puts it on that list, we understand that it's important that it needs to be addressed. And then keeping records is also a very important part. One limits liability, because if we show that we're acting in good faith, then we can probably prevent any poor ramifications. Some of the topics that we were going over, we have to start out with explaining what the IIPP is. What it looks like in the expectations, not just for supervisors, but for staff, and how HR and myself, I guess, are going to be carrying this out. Reporting requirements, what to expect afterwards, maintaining a safe workplace by minimizing hazards. The emergency action plan, the CSSP, it's also a requirement of the CSSP that all staff members are trained in that. The idea of personal protective equipment, which we kind of spoke about when we had first aid training a few weeks ago. Lifting hazards, fire safety, medical treatment again, fall hazards, and like I said, workplace violence. We do have a responsibility to be compliant to this, informing workers of provisions of our IIP program, recognizing employees who perform exemplary acts, provide training, to communicate. We need to make sure that everyone understands our plan, that we act accordingly, we follow with what we say. Doing a hazard assessment, making sure that any safety items, ultimately the supervisors are walking the sites as well, to make sure that they're seeing the same things that people on the ground are seeing. How to conduct accident disclosure investigations, so getting a camera out, ask questions, and having some forms, so there's some specific questions that supervisors need to know and report. Our records of correcting hazards that are reported to us, and just other bureaucratic information that goes into this entire process. But like we had said, that this will be something that begins next year, and then it will be carried out throughout the course of your training sessions.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I also just want to say the full program would not have been here if it wasn't for Nick, so thank you so much for your help. It's, thank you. Obviously, the health and safety of our students and staff is probably our number one priority, right? So many of the points outlined in the IIP, the schools have already been doing again and would do in the workplace injury or illness. But now our IIP is not only a reference point, but it's also an action plan to prevent occupational injury and illness. I'll just run through my list. A lot of we have very similar things, but our action items to comply with the IIP and what that entails. So number one, give workers adequate information about the IIP and where the document is located. How to report a safety concern using our staff reporting form, touched on that. Training and instruction, periodic trainings throughout the year relevant to our industry. Ergonomics comes to mind off the top of my head. Number three, hazard assessment periodically throughout the schools and when an injury occurs or when a hazard is reported or observed. Number four, encourage prompt reporting of injury or illness without fear of reprisal. 5, accident and exposure investigations and hazard corrections. That includes interviewing injured workers and witnesses, reviewing the supervisor's report of injury and determining the cause of the incident. From there, correct the hazards to the best of our abilities. 6, further train all supervisors on the steps to take when an employee is injured on the job. 7, make the link to prevention. Workplaces are surveyed periodically to identify hazards and action is taken to eliminate hazards. Employees are trained about potential workplace hazards and how to prevent injury. Number 8, support injured workers. Workers receive prompt medical attention. The school maintains contact with injured employees and injured employees are treated respectfully. Number 9, promote effective return to work. Employees are encouraged to return to work as soon as medically appropriate and modified or alternative work is made available when appropriate and possible. The employer and injured employee work together to ensure the employee is doing work that supports the recovery process. And this will be implemented next school year and will of course have a nice roll-out process for all of our employees.
I didn't realize you had a presentation in here.
No worries for you.
Yeah, that's okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I think this is awesome. This is great. I think this is and adding in addition to what the school already has. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. That is very time-consuming and very also thoughtfulness in terms of how to put this all together, especially as a group. So thank you. Any questions?
So this will come as another policy that will come back to you in our May meeting, seeking your approval then. And as you've already heard from Nick and Holly, we would be implementing this with the coming school year. So as they come back to us in August.
On to item 21. The Title IX policy draft, Holly Chip.
Is there a slide presentation for this, Holly, that Eric needs to know about?
There's not. Thank you very much.
I have it up here if you want to reference anything, but
You want this side?
Thank you. Yeah, there's a,
Flow chart?
yeah, it's Title IX policy and procedure overview.
yeah, it's less.
Right there.
If you scroll up just one page, Eric.
Sure.
So Title IX, I think maybe a lot of you are familiar with Title IX. It's a federal law that prohibits any educational institution that receives federal financial assistance from discriminating based on sex. We are required to comply with Title IX if we receive any kind of federal financial assistance, and we do receive a small amount. Should we first said, correct?
Right, especially.
So Title IX defines sexual harassment to include any of the three types of misconduct on the basis of sex, all which jeopardize equal access to education that Title IX is designed to protect. Title IX regulations define sexual harassment more narrowly than the school's code of conduct or the employee handbook. Notice the language used and how Title IX defines sexual harassment. So any unwelcome conduct that a reasonable person would find so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. So a Title IX complaint is usually going to be something egregious, really. Not every type of sexual harassment complaint is going to be Title IX. We do have trainings that we'll have to do before this policy is active. That's right. Live. You'll notice the names at the top of this page if you can scroll up a little bit. So I will be the Title IX coordinator and also the investigator. I will also be the informal resolution officer, and then the decision makers will be the site administrators. So of course Nancy and Eric, and then the appeals officer will be Michael. So we will all have to do formal Title IX training before we roll this process out. If you scroll down, Eric, there is a flow chart that summarizes the policy. Really, it's very lengthy, so I can just run through this quickly. So a Title IX complaint is filed. The Title IX coordinator determines if policy applies and discusses supportive measures and resources. If the Title IX policy applies, there are two resolution processes. Obviously, everyone would probably vote for an informal resolution, but again, that's not always the case. So a formal resolution, we would go through the steps on the right-hand side. Do you want me to run through these? Okay, I'm happy to. It's just it's a lot.
It's a lot.
So either a formal resolution, which is outlined on the right-hand side, or an informal resolution, which is outlined in the little gray box on the left-hand side at the bottom. Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
Well, other than just that, it's, Holly has been busy at work. It was, you will recall, it was this board who said, hire an HR person, right? And so, that's what you get, and so she is, tremendously, just tremendous help, really doing a great job. And this is a required policy, and so all of these things, she's bringing us on board with really where we need to be. And so I don't think there's anything too artsy or creative about a Title IX policy. It's just something that needs to be, and that's what's here in front of you. To come again for your approval at the next meeting.
And I think just to make that Title IX is already in process, but that you then need to get certified in order to make it formal.
Right.
But you are using this policy in effect now.
So it's only been recently that we would even have to have a Title IX policy because we judiciously do all that we can to not take any federal money.
Right.
However, because the way special ed is funded at Endeavor, it's not the same case in Madera, but at Endeavor, the federal money comes directly to the school, which then precipitates the necessity to have a Title IX policy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, moving on to item 22. Does anybody have any questions?
We do have a request for a pause, a break for stretch and.
Yes. Yes, so we're going to put a, yes, pause.
Sure, 5 minute break.
Pause, a 5-minute break, and at 4:49, we'll return in 5 minutes.
Bernie, I'm gonna mute us so that it's not all crazy loud.
Yeah,
You can stay for yourself if you wanna yell or scream.
Eric, if I could, I'm gonna have to leave at 5. I just wanted to let you know I'm not gonna be walking out on you intentionally, but I have to leave at 5 o'clock. I've got to get to the Bay Area tonight, so I've got to get.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we're done with all action, so yeah, so thank
Okay,
you so much.
all right, thanks, guys.
And Bernie, feel free, you can just hit like leave on that device there if you want. You can just hit leave since there's no one there, right?
I don't think so. It feels quiet. It feels empty here. Yeah, so.
Got a number there to close up for you, but if you just wanna hit leave on the meeting, that way the projector's all done.
Okay, I'll do that, Eric. I signed my attendance. I'll leave that out on the desk out there.
That's great, thank you, Bernie.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good? We're good?
You're good.
Okay, we're gonna be starting back up at 4:55. Okay, moving on to item, do we have to do roll call? No, comments, okay. All right, item number 22, that's doing the reports, the executive director, Mr. Cox.
Right, thank you very much. A number of things to just bring to your attention. We have been diligently looking for a building for Endeavor, new building. And at our last meeting, we were pursuing a building with our realtor that's here in town within Fresno Unified boundaries. We prepared a letter of interest, which is sort of an initial offer, and presented that to the owner. However, right before we presented ours, somebody got in front of us and presented theirs. So we're second in line. So that's still sort of a live action. It's out there. However, the other interested party offered more than we were offering and had proposed a shorter. So as I've said before, our timeline and the number of things that we need to be able to accomplish during an escrow period is pretty significant. So it requires a certain amount of time in escrow. And so we have an offer in, we've not heard a denial, but we know that the seller is working with who offered first and their offer was better. So we're obviously at a bigger disadvantage. So likelihood is that's probably in the rearview mirror.
Kind of a letter of intent.
And it's a letter of intent.
30
it's not
days
an
after.
Yeah, it's a letter of intent.
Letter of
Yeah, I said that wrong,
Right,
sorry.
yeah.
Letter of intent, it's right. So that's there. We are continuing to look. What we were focusing on looks like that might not be that, but we're continuing to look. Number two, the bathroom update. Funny to have that as a regular update, but it appears that adding some bathrooms to our existing building in Oakhurst is as much of a project as finding a new building here in Fresno. So Brian Foltz, who you all know, is a civil engineer, and he is working with us, finishing drawings and working with county planning in Madera, and maybe has already turned in our package to them. I know he was queued up and we have been back and forth. So Brian's done some really great work in helping us know what's ahead of us. Looks like we will have to add and make improvements to our existing septic system, but it looks like in regards to our building loading capacity, five additional toilets will be acceptable to the county, we think, but they have to sign off on it. And just so you know, in our drawings and plans, every toilet has its own, sink in the bathroom and its own door. There's not going to be multiple fixtures behind the door. So every one door, one toilet arrangement is what we're proposing, adding 5 to the existing 2, so we've got seven restrooms there.
Wow.
5 additions. Right.
Wow.
That would be exciting.
Versus the long line we have.
Right, exactly. The long line with the dance. Right. We are, just to let you know, really the tech team, Melissa and Aaron have been putting time in on this, working on an artificial intelligence policy. It's, as we all know, it was something that was only talked about in weird, crazy science fiction movies like a couple years ago, and all of a sudden now it's actually burst upon the scene and it's in our lives. And we have students who are already using things like ChatGPT to do homework. And so the reality is there actually is legitimate use for things like that. And the policy is to help us define how to use AI appropriately and legitimately, what is not legitimate, and how to interact with it. And so that will come to you when we have a draft that our tech folks are on that currently.
Kids are smart.
Oh yeah, they're on.
They're on it.
Also to let you know, we had informed you that the FICMAT, which is Fiscal Crisis Management and Assistance Team, state level Sacramento-based organization that does a lot of work for the legislature in regards to accountancy for government programs and auditing. Legislature called for FICMAT to investigate non-classroom based schools, and particularly in regards to the funding determination process. Funding determination is a process that we have to go through as a non-classroom based charter. So there's lots of charters in the world, in California, but most are seat-based attendance, your standard seat-based attendance. There are a minority, although a large minority, of non-classroom based charter schools, which are like the 3 schools here, which accrue their attendance through an independent study agreement. And so FICMAT was tasked to investigate the non-classroom funding determination process by which, as non-classroom based schools, on a periodic basis, it used to be every 4 or 5 years, now it seems to be about every other year, we have to fill out a report that documents how we're spending our money relative to our revenues, that we're spending at least 40% of our revenues on certificated instructional staff, at least 80% of our revenues on instruction, and that we keep a 25-to-1 certificated teacher to student ratio. And so they were asked to look into that. I've shared with you before, or Jody has, that was out there. That report has been released. It had to be released by March 1st. That was included in your packet. And so you have that whole report. We're not prepared to be able to really deconstruct that for you. We think it looks like that it has positives in regards to our schools. So Jody has filed funding determinations for which schools, Jody?
For Endeavor and Mountain Home.
Endeavor and Mountain Home. Endeavor and Mountain Home did not meet the funding determination criteria of 80% all on instruction. And so we are in what's called mitigating circumstances. The reason we did not meet the 80% requirement is because after the last board meeting, at the last minute, the state gave extra money, which overthrew our revenues. So now they're making 80% of the new amount of revenues threw us off. And so one of the things that's in the FICMAT report is that one-time money should not be counted. And so there's good things. Jody's done a pretty good dissection of it. I think in the May meeting, we'll be able to bring, our general thoughts, what's there. But we think it's a mixed bag. We think there's things that we're probably not too excited about, but there's also some pieces that make a lot of sense in regards to our school and our operation. So.
Can I add something real quick to that? So the two items, the Mountain Home and Endeavor being the mitigating circumstances, of course, that's some concern that they would say, well, when it doesn't work for you, we're not going to give you full funding. But in the case of the recommendations from FICMAT and the Legislative Analyst's Office, the items around there were to recommend for approval of those people that are missing it because of one-time funds and because of set-asides for facilities, which is exactly what we are mitigating about. So I feel very, very positive.
This helps our mitigating argument when we have to be in front of these.
And within the report itself, it says CDE is already saying, we always approve those if there are these sorts of problems. Well, that's what they said in the report. We're hoping they're good at their word and we'll be good.
So by the time we meet in May, we will know.
Well, no.
Yeah, where we are with funding.
It's in April that we're going for the president.
Yep. Any questions with that? So item number 5, thoughts. This is the season. We're moving into the season where we're preparing budgets for the coming year, preparing contracts for the coming year. And so we have on my notes talk about thoughts regarding WSCS staff salary for the 24-25 school year. So this board in the last 2 years, each year has done a 5% salary improvement across all schedules. And we are we're queuing up to be ready to ask the board for an additional 5% in the coming year. we have some more work to do before we're ready for that, but have some initial work done there. And, I mean, the bottom line is that in that period of time, the state has granted the COLAs, cost of living adjustments over that period of time have been what, Jody?
29.8%.
29% COLAs, and we've done 10% of that in that period of time for salary improvements. And so there's a couple of things that work in our mind. One is competitive with the rest of the districts. We've done good work in granting 10% salary schedule improvement over 2 years. However, the districts that were Fresno Unified, Yosemite around us are also doing that same, and very often more. And so we continue in a competitive way in regards to in industry, not necessarily keep pace with what others are doing. So that's a concern for us. Additionally,
Add one thing real quick.
yeah,
The COLAs do not translate directly into augmentations to
salary.
payroll anyway, because there's also inflation. There's step increases that are not.
And just the cost of services that we have to use.
Services, because obviously inflation affects our costs as well as payroll people who are receiving payroll. So there's lots of other stuff, but it's an interesting analysis to do. What's the COLAs versus what we've been doing? We expect it to lag. It's just lagging significantly this winter. So just want to make sure.
Additionally, as we mentioned, the funding determination, one of the criteria we have to meet is 40% of our revenue has to go to instructional staffing costs. And we've always been able to really kind of kill that one. In the past, we've been at 50% plus. This last funding determination, we were at 44. So you have to stay above the 40. There's been a withering effect because the revenue has increased. But what we're paying for in instructional costs and staffing has not necessarily kept pace.
It's an alignment issue. And the other thing you have to think of is we've been adding staff. So staff comes out of that same pot of the due for augmentation. So the more staff, the less per unit you have to give salary increases for. So our staffing has improved, and for good reason, and well done, because we're really far more, our capacity is huge compared to what it used to be. So that's great. And we have to be very strong capacity wise, and that's where we are. But so it's not an apples to apples comparison, but it is time.
So at the May meeting, we will be bringing a proposed new budget for the coming year, as well as staff contracts. At that time, we may or may not be recommending, salary schedule improvement of the 5%. But we're wanted you to know we're talking about, we're looking at it, trying to shoot towards that.
Right.
And then I didn't have it on my point, but you should have the new calendar for the coming year in your packet, so you can put that on the fridge. It follows our new calendar, roughly follows splitting the difference as best we can between Yosemite Unifieds and Fresno Unified. It's basically like Yosemite Unifieds and Fresno Unifieds. Where we differ is Fresno does a 3-week Christmas winter break, and we've never done that before. We have it built into this calendar. So sort of the mid-year semester break, there would be a 3-week break holiday for students there. Otherwise, it's the same as Yosemite's calendar as well. And it's 175 days calendar. So for your information, you can now make your vacation plans for next year. And then finally, before we can do this, we can do this after the meeting's adjourned, but this is the time we have to get Form 700 signed. And if you have, this is in regards to conflict of interest as board members. And the kind of conflicts would be if we are doing business with you in some business that you have or some fiscal arrangement with you, that could be a conflict. If we don't have any business with you, if you were doing this on a voluntary basis and have no fiscal interest in the school, then you have no reportable interest, which is in the red box at the bottom. So when we're concluded, I'd like to be able to get these from you if I can, and if you have questions about it, we can discuss it at that time. And that's it for me, unless you have questions.
Anybody? Okay, moving on to the Fresno staff liaison report. Grace, for the LCAP progress.
Right, a couple of updates before the LCAP progress. So we, as part of our culture down here in Endeavor, we like to include, I don't know why there's sort of. Nope,
That was delicious.
there we go, okay. After our staff meetings on our once a month, meetings, it stands for meetings a lot of time. We also celebrate staff birthdays, so that's what you're seeing there. We celebrate National School Choice Week, led by Mrs. Coots. And so on the right, you see some teacher doors. There's a competition, door decorating competition that teachers participated in. And then some other student activities. Students got to write in why they choose Endeavor, what they like about Endeavor. And then the cubes are a big art project that took place, also representing that, actually listed on one of our walls. And then we looked like Hogwarts for one day with all the kids running around with matching scarves, representing school choice. We had our annual visit from Fresno Unified, and it was very successful. We heard Nancy and I got to hear the debriefing and, it's Mike as well. And really, really good feedback, like inspiring hope for the next generation, and just really great things that we heard across the board. They loved the classroom visits. They loved that our students presented to them. And so really good takeaways from that. As far as professional development, this last month in our PLCs, our elementary side of things did training for state testing. And our high school side discussed some best practices in the classroom. So ongoing discussions, really good stuff coming out of those meetings. In curriculum, we continue to focus on options for students who are not at grade level, and trying to find new options for them that are not only digital, but also can be text-based. And then our elementary side was clearing out some outdated curriculum and cleaning and prepping for new curriculum that will be coming in. And technology, we continue our discussions in AI. Obviously, you've heard it already in today's meeting, so hot topic right now. In terms of LCAP, at the last meeting, I shared some of our work we had done with Parsec, so that's ongoing since then. We met with Parsec and our staff at both sites, gave input on some critical action areas. That was on February 2nd. We also had our first focus group meeting that took place on February 29th, which was basically an introduction to the LCAP, similar to what we did here at our last board meeting. And then this Thursday, on March 14th, we'll have our second focus group meeting where we've invited staff and students and parents to give us feedback on various areas of our goals and actions.
Yes.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Grace. Right, so I'm happy to report that I am once again Western Sierra Charter Schools WASC coordinator.
You're happy?
Yes. So,
We are happy that you're the coordinator.
We're happy too.
WASC stands for Western Association of Schools and Colleges, and it's an important accreditation to have, especially for high schools and for charter renewals. And so this process is ongoing. It's a cycle of every 3 to 6 years, depending on which accreditation we receive, which last accreditation was 6 years, no visit, no report, the highest accreditation any school can receive. So we're hoping for that again. The two main questions that this process asks of our schools is how well are all the students learning and achieving? And is the school doing everything possible to support high achievement and prepare students to be college and career ready and diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment? So the whole process kind of answers those two questions, and it's one report. So this year, what's different about this cycle is that we are going to be able to combine Glacier High School and Endeavor's TK-12 program in one self-study report. And our Mount Homeschool initial accreditation will be submitted in July. So although it's not part of this self-study, we are hoping to combine all three schools in one cycle, one report, one visit.
So just to make sure
Yeah.
we're clear, Glacier and Endeavor are already accredited with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. Mountain Home isn't and never has been because it's a K-8 school. However, because Endeavor is now accredited, which includes a K-8 program, it was really, I think, initially Nancy's idea, and we brought the whole staff on board. We might as well now just bring in Mountain Home. So there's certainly no harm in it, and we think that's going to be a really good addition for us.
And so right now, we're currently writing the self-study report, but our WASP visiting committee is scheduled for next school year, March 5th through the 8th. And it is going to be a combined visit of Glacier and Endeavor's WASP self-study and Mount Homeschool's initial. We already know who our chair is, they understand what we're trying to accomplish, and so it's been really great to know who's leading us in that regard. And this endeavor of getting the WASP self-study done requires that all stakeholders are part of this and give us their voice, feedback. And so to start off our WASP writing year, we conducted a WASP orientation for all staff. And then Glacier and Endeavor did a second training specifically to understand chapter 3 and subgroup assignments. Chapter 3 is one that has 5 categories that we divvied up staff into 5 different subgroups, and the categories are governance, curriculum, instruction, some accountability, and school culture. And so we've done a few trainings for WASP, on WASP for staff, and our parents and students contribute to this document through our LCAP focus group. So what we do is we combine LCAP with WASP when we do our focus group, so we're able to gather that information from students and parents. And Glacier and Endeavor self-study report should be available for you to read the fall of 2024. And so look forward to that 50+ page document. So it's exciting. Okay, so I'll go quickly now through the Endeavor pictures and things going on. Our TK and Kinder classes have been completing their community helpers unit. So we've had CHP Officer Rodriguez come, AJ Fox, Channel 24 meteorologist, Clovis Fire Explorers, doctors, nurses, EMT and farmers come to spend some time with our TK and Kinder students, and they've loved every minute of it. That's awesome. Our first and second grade students are caught here making landmarks with clay. And I was actually present during that class, and they were very proud to tell me all the different things that they were creating. We had a special guest, a professional musician, and actually he's one of our Endeavor parents, Patrick Contreras, has a Violin on Fire YouTube channel. And he came to share his love of music, his talents with our students. And I have actually a little video. Let's see if it plays. Was it shared with
Did you not share the audio?
I shared that with Fabio, yeah.
Not sure. Is it because we're on mute?
Should. Sorry, Nancy. Test this.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So you can see, he was there with our students, and I don't know how to. Okay, here, a little bit. Okay, so. Yeah, I thought we selected audio, but for whatever reason, it's not gonna work for us. He also accompanied our students with some of their songs. And so that was really great. The other audience I'm gonna work with. Okay, high school students, went to Monterey Bay Aquarium for their biology and chemistry class. Ms. Reeve and Mrs. Nirvana. And then I wanted to highlight here our CT in education students. So students who are following our pathway, students who are interested in careers in education, did this whole wall, they look like records, which they're not, but they had to brainstorm how to display the history of education. So if you go to our stairs, you'll see that whole wall and very informative, but they had a great time doing a display board. And then on the right, we have our guitar students, which we're not gonna be able to hear them play. What song are they playing?
Country Road.
So unfortunately, sorry about that. And we just had our STEAM fair last week, which we had students create projects that represent science, technology, engineer, art, or math. And we actually had a math project, probability, you see on the bottom left. So we had a little bit of everything. And then we are doing a lot of things here at Endeavor. There's a lot of things planned. So I'm just gonna highlight a few things. Tomorrow, elementary students are heading to the Downey Planetarium at Fresno State. On April 6th, we have our spring variety show at Central High School Theater. Our Spanish students in high school are going to be able to get a tour of Univision Spanish television studios and watch the recording of their morning show. Our ROV students are joining Glacier's ROV students in the local competition of white chess on April 11th. 8th grade students are going to the courthouse April 17th, Fresno, and May 7th, we have our Grizzly baseball game scheduled for that day. And May 29th, we have a full day at Fresno State's concert hall where we're going to do our kinder graduation, 8th grade promotion, and high school graduation, all on the same day, same venue.
Not the same time, but same day.
Not the same time. And you're all invited. Okay, couple of plugs here. We did Nothing But Cake fundraising and we were able to raise over $500. And the upcoming one is April 4th at Nick the Group Fundraiser Restaurant. So they'll give proceeds, showing this flyer will allow us to receive a portion of what is collected that day. I think that's it. Any questions? I'm sorry about the audio.
Yeah, sorry, I thought it should have worked. I think it might have to select the output on your computer where it's supposed to.
Let's try it
Thank
next
you,
time.
Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. Oper staff liaison report, Mr. Slose.
Yeah, John was not able to stay in the meeting all the way to this time, so he's.
Okay. Eric.
All right, I like to stand up here. It's the way I was raised.
Yes.
I like to look at you guys when I'm talking.
Instead of our backs.
Yes. I'm trying something new, like I'll put it at the end too, if you want to view the presentation, I will try to share it out, but if if you want, I'll have it at the end, so if you want, because it's so. Anyways, very much. All right, so just quick highlights. We've had a lot going on the last number of months, the Poetry Out Loud competition. We have our ongoing PE days at Camp Oakhurst and our staff meeting days. We had, and I'll show some pictures of these as we go here, but just kind of real quick. Eagle Tour for our 4th graders at Millerton Lake was super fun. Our Academic Super Quiz was on February 3rd, and Glacier took first place. And so they will be going to the state competition. It is now our 3rd year officially taking first place at the county level. And so that's, what do you always say?
It's dynasty.
It's a dynasty now.
It is.
So that's super exciting. We had an 8th grade welcome to Glacier meeting, kind of informational meeting, and my latest report is almost every 8th grader is saying they're coming to Glacier next year. So there's about 20 that have said they want to continue out of, I think, like 23 or 24 at this point. So that's good news. We then had the Poetry Out Loud County competition. I think your son participated in it, right, Mary? How did that go?
Great, it was wonderful. We won a little place and it was really
That's awesome. We had sent out information to parents and we're gathering all the information at both sites in terms of who's coming back. That helps us in terms of figuring out how much space we have for next year. Mountain Home School has 3 cross-country meets. We just had our first one at Wasuma Elementary School. That was great. This last Saturday, our academic pentathlon team for Mountain Home School competed. Did very well. You also had a son in that too. You're just all over the place. You have sons in both. Decathlon, pentathlon. I think you're also attending to the state competition, if I recall. So that's awesome. They did very well. One of our students, she seemed like she was up there every time getting medals, and that was super fun. One of the kids said, "I felt like I was winning every time she went up." So I thought that was really just a great attitude.
That's exactly what you want.
Right.
Exactly.
Some upcoming events, just really quick. We have our spelling bee coming up, more cross-country meets. Our enrichment classes are ending. We don't continue the ones that are just kind of those optional classes. Math classes will continue, high school classes will continue. But then we start to do some other fun events for the remainder of the year, like testing. But no, in addition to that, some other really fun things that, one of the things is I'm partnering with Kim Mix to do a roller skating STEM field trip, which we just announced today. We have a math competition. Kim Mix, I should say academic pentathlon. Kim Mix is our main coach for that, and then she then goes right around, turns and does this math competition at the county level too. Big thank you, and Katie Kelly is also our decathlon coach, and so hats off to both of them. Got our prom coming up. Biology is going kayaking to Elkhorn Slough. I think that's how you pronounce it. We have a regional spelling bee competition, Catalina field trip. There's more going on in May, but I decided to stop there. Here's just some pictures. We're talking about training of staff. So Nick came and partnered with Kelly Maples, our new student supervisor, and we did some training of first aid and the use of our kits. We have this really extensive safety first aid kit, and so we talked a lot about that, reviewing our safety plan, practicing fire drills. This is just one of our classes, Meet the Masters. They study different art and masters, and this is just some of them. Mr. DeCarly organized a jump rope contest. And the students really got into it, and some of the staff also. I think Mr. Sloas was our staff winner of I forget how many, but it was a lot. This is just a trip of our bald eagle field trip. They went to Millerton Lake. They had a good time on that. That was for, I believe, 4th graders. This is our decathlon team, our winners. They were super excited. The county gives a little bit of money to help offset costs there. This is our pentathlon team at the competition also. And I think Mrs. Meeks promised that she would not show this one with the little mustaches you can't see, but I never made that promise. Poetry out loud. Now, one of the great things is we had our leadership projects, which is just a great event. And one of the cool things is our regional supervisor, Bobby McCauley, was one of our judges to give feedback. And I got to participate in that. So just here's some pictures of that. I talked to Mrs. Friesen today. She felt like this was one of the best, just in terms of how it went, the feedback, all the things there. Students talk about these fundraisers, and I was amazed about, what the students were doing there. Our Learn to Ski program is just about wrapping up. Mike Cox has been participating. I don't know if you want to say anything about that at all.
Been great. It's a lot of fun bringing brand new, never skied before little kids in, and they're on bunny slopes all day the first day, and then by the day, the 4th or 5th day skiing, we had kids going down Black Diamonds. So it's been a great program, and I just want to say totally well done to John Sloas, who's administered all of that, organized all that.
It's a lot of work.
Super great, a lot of work, super great job, and we had really great parent volunteer ski helpers. It was a super year.
This is just what our cross-country meet at Wasuma. One of the fun things coming up, like I said, that I'm partnering with Mrs. Meeks, because we both love roller skating rinks. That was my job. That's how I started my DJ career, was working at a roller skating rink. It is a STEM field trip, so they actually are learning some educational things along the ways. That's a lot of fun. Prom's coming up, red themes, red carpet. We're having a great response on that. Just really quick, we've already talked technology. We already mentioned the cloud-based system there. We are also in the process of upgrading our internal network and firewall. We get E-rate funds that offsets the costs, I think, by like 70%. And so we are upgrading all of our wireless access points, firewall system, all of that. We just finished our bidding process. You have to go through a bidding process with that. We're also looking at increasing our internet speeds because of also we get offset costs there. So in Oakhurst.
And what Bernie mentioned too, if you go cloud-based, you need to have increased.
So in Oakhurst, the speeds we can get right now is about 3 times what we have right now. In Fresno, potentially we're looking at 5 to 10 times of evaluating costs and that in terms of increasing our speeds of our internet, both downloads and uploads. Already mentioned the AI policy. We're evaluating Chromebooks for some increased purchasing. We are moving forward with Promethean board replacement and also some of the technical difficulties we're having with our Oakhurst board site. Hopefully will be remedied by that. We are adding to our IT team and we're actually starting that process. Holly's been super helpful in terms of flying that position, and we're going to be starting some interviews and hopefully we find a good candidate for that. And there's a whole lot more that I can't think of right now. So any questions at all regarding that?
Oh, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, moving to item 23, next scheduled board meeting is Tuesday, May 14th, 2024 at 3 o'clock. All right, we are going to adjourn. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
That's so moving.
Second? I'll second. All right, let's close, and Diane, can you roll call?
No, you don't have to roll call.
All right. Hey, you're done. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.